Good afternoon from Vienna and a warm welcome to our LOIS webinar, in which we would like to introduce and discuss our Lab for Open Innovation in Science. My name is Marion Poetz. I'm an innovation professor at Copenhagen Business School, and I have also been involved in developing the Ludwig Boltzmann Gesellschaft's Open Innovation in Science initiative. As part of this, I'm also now or currently acting as the scientific director of the Open Innovation in Science Research Center and the Lab for Open Innovation in Science. I'm here today together with a couple of my colleagues, two former LOIS alumni, Boltzmann and Andrea Olschewski, who will introduce themselves a little later, and Marie Trappel, the LOIS program manager. Boltzmann and Marie will be answering questions along the presentation, and together with Andrea, I'm going to talk a little bit about her experiences with LOIS so far. A couple of practical informations for you. You do not need a microphone and video, just speakers, listen and view only mode as an attendee in the webinar. Feel free to adjust your audio settings. There is a hand raising tool. Please raise your hand if you can hear me clearly. Can we try that out, please? Could you please raise your hand if you can hear me? Yeah, cool. I see a lot of hands. Excellent. Super. Thank you very much. If anyone has problems, use the Q&A function, and Boltzmann and Marie will be happy to answer that in writing. Also, for any questions you have in terms of LOIS, type in Q&A or comments anytime. Boltzmann, who is a LOIS alumnus, and Marie, LOIS program manager, will be happy to answer your questions during the presentation. The presentation chat will last about 45 minutes, and afterwards there will be an open Q&A session where we will be answering selected questions here as part of our discussion. The chat function is turned off for you as an attendee. I'll use it to share links and information with you. So for interaction, please only use the Q&A function. The webinar will be recorded and you will find a copy later on our website. All right, so let's dive into LOIS, and I would like to start out by briefly introducing LOIS to you. What was our motivation to develop LOIS? What is LOIS about? And what are the most important elements of our next LOIS, which will start in May 2018. So I'm now going to share a little presentation with you. Let's go on to here. I hope everyone is able to see it. Yes, you do. Wonderful. Thank you very much. So LOIS, Lab for Open Innovation in Science, was developed in a collaborative fashion among open innovation and open science experts from all over the world, together with my colleagues at the Ludwig Boltzmann Gesellschaft. And the reason why we started developing LOIS was basically that we wanted to find a way of enabling scientists to use open innovation principles and methods in a scientific context. There's a lot of positive insight on processes and effects of open innovation in a more corporate context, in open source software, in open source hardware. And there's a couple of challenges that science is facing today. And one of the things you all know about is that there is somewhat a disconnect between what science does and what society and business needs. And that was basically the starting point for developing this. And on the other hand side, we all know that the way we do science today has a couple of things, a couple of issues that could seriously be improved. And for example, you know the famous novelty bias. There's research clearly indicating that the more novel your research proposals are, the less likely it is that you get funding. We know that a lot of scientific results, a lot of scientific insight is never picked up by anyone. So many papers are never cited. Much research is never translated into innovation or never creates any impact in society. We also, for example, know that most of the time it's only positive results that are published. What about all the things that failed? There's so many research teams all around the world working on the same things. If they would talk to each other, if they would collaborate, maybe things would look differently. So drivers like this motivated us to develop the Lab for Open Innovation in Science. And basically what it is about is it enables scientists to learn about and experiment with principles and methods of open innovation in a scientific context along the entire scientific research process, from very early stages like generating research questions, developing research proposals, designing research studies, to eventually translating scientific knowledge into innovation. Not for the sake of applying open innovation, but for the sake of improving novelty, efficiency, and impact of scientific research, and hopefully or eventually contributing to better connecting science, society, and business. It is a very unique educational program that has not existed in this way before, so we really set this up from scratch. And the most important elements of this program is that it's both, it's a training program, so we aim for providing you with latest insights related to open innovation, open science, and open innovation in science. And it's also a practice module. So it is an educational program that has a lab character. So it's not only knowledge transfer, it's knowledge co-creation. Basically, we have the possibility with LOIS that besides learning about open innovation in science, participants can design and start implementing their own open innovation in science projects in a supervised environment, and as such, of course, in somewhat a safe space. Our training component consists of 4 basic elements. We have modules on basics in open innovation in science, where we will be talking about open innovation models, open innovation principles, open innovation processes, open innovation sources, and then try to understand how that is different in a corporate context and in a scientific context. So we will be discussing different forms of value creation and value capture of scientific knowledge with respect to open and collaborative approaches. So that's basically our common body of knowledge. And then we have various specialization topics. One related to opening up scientific discovery. So this is about topics like crowd science, about crowdfunding science, collaborative science. This is about the role of users and user communities, for example, patient communities, in developing and implementing scientific research. Then we have a module block related to opening up the translation of scientific knowledge into innovation. In this module block, we will, for example, be talking about science-based entrepreneurship and innovation, how open innovation principles and methods can facilitate science-based entrepreneurship and innovation. We will be talking about open value capture models and strategies from scientific knowledge. We will be talking about external partnering for commercializing science, or more generally for putting science to use, and how to find applications out there in the world for scientific research. And then we have a module block that relates to enabling and facilitating open innovation in science, where we are going to, on the one hand side, look at the individual level. So what are individual capacities to be for openness and sharing, individual capacities of individual scientists. And then also we will be talking about the organizational level and the ecosystem level. So what does it take on the organizational or ecosystem level to facilitate, sustainably facilitate and implement open innovation in science? And as already introduced beforehand, we have this practice block. So we, as part of LOIS, we offer an on-the-project training. LOIS participants can propose open innovation in science projects, and we will select a certain number of these projects, which we will be coaching and supervising, and where we enable and facilitate peer learning in lab project meetings accompanying the various training modules. So you can read about all this in detail on our website, and of course also in our LOIS folder. Some important information on the next LOIS, which is going to be a one-year LOIS program starting in May 2018 and ending in March 2019. It's going to comprise a kickoff meeting, 13 training modules on the various topics that I've just outlined in 7 blocks, accompanied by lab project work, so designing and implementing your own open innovation science projects, and lab project meetings where we will be exchanging our knowledge and jointly co-creating these open innovation science projects. The program language is English and the location is Vienna, so the 7 block modules will be taking place in Vienna. Some of the coaching, of course, will be facilitated with online meetings. LOIS faculty consists of leading international open innovation and open science experts from all kinds of organizations, universities, research institutions like CERN, and also open innovation platforms like Patient Innovation. Overall, this is not like, LOIS is not a lecturing exercise. It's a highly interactive and problem-based teaching and learning approach. More or less, together with LOIS participants, we co-create the content and we co-create our learning. LOIS is, you can attend LOIS by providing a tuition fee that is 5,500 euros. This is a very favorable rate because we are fortunate that we receive co-financing of the Austrian National Foundation for Research, Technology and Development. The key target group for LOIS is senior scientists from all kinds of scientific disciplines. As part of our last LOIS, we had various medical scientists, archaeologists, human rights scientists, or for example, life scientists, so a broad variety of scientific disciplines. Senior scientists means that we expect LOIS participants to have a minimum of 3 years of experience after finishing their PhD. So we're talking to assistant, associate, or full professors or senior scientists in more general. For the next LOIS, our application deadline is November 15, so there's still some time to apply. And together with an international jury, we are selecting 20 participants to join us for the next LOIS by December 15. There's a lot more information on LOIS available on our website. If you're interested, you can also watch LOIS video material on our YouTube channel or join us on Twitter or Facebook. And if there's any question that is not answered as part of this webinar today, feel free to contact Marie Tappel, our LOIS program manager, anytime via email or phone. So this is it, a basic overview from my side. As a next step, I would now like to invite Andrea Olschewski to join me here. I just have to stop the screen sharing. Just a second. Stop share. Okay. So ideally, you should now be able to see me, and to my left, Andrea Olschewski. Andrea is the Vice Rector for Medicine at the Johannes Kepler University Linz. She's a LOIS alumna, and she's also a leading medical researcher in fields such as lung vascular research. And Andrea, I would like to ask you to introduce yourselves a little bit more in detail and then talk to our webinar participants about your LOIS experience.
Thank you very much, Marion, for introducing me. As you have already mentioned, at the moment I am the Vice Rector for for medicine at the Johannes Kepler University in Linz. There is a political decision a couple of years ago to build up a new medical faculty in Austria, and at the moment we are building up our academic faculty, the different departments, clinical departments, and theoretical institutes in Linz. So this is my job since August 1st this summer. during the last 7 years, I served as a director of one of the new Ludwig Boltzmann Institute in Austria, with a special focus on lung vascular research. My background is medicine. I'm anesthesiologist from my medical specialty, and I'm also a researcher. I have started with my clinical specialization more than 20 years ago, 24 years ago actually, and at the same time I have also started to work as a scientist, as a clinical scientist. It was a really hard time, but it was really, really useful for my clinical education as well as my scientific development. So I was trained in the clinic and at the same time in the physiology for doing clinical related research in basic science. So after my first 7 years in the clinic, I got a fellowship from the German Scientific Foundation to go for 2 years to abroad. I went to the US for getting more more insights into the field of lung vascular research. Then I returned 2002 from the University of Minnesota to Gießen, to Germany, where I built up my very first own research group from 2003 to 2006. And 2005, I applied for a full professorship at the Medical University of Graz in Austria. So I moved from Germany to Austria more than 10 years ago when I got this professorship for anesthesiology with a special focus on experimental anesthesia. So this is my background.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And you have an impressive track record of publications, we have to say as well, right?
Thank you very much. So cool. Indeed, it was I was very lucky because at the end of the last century, I got involved in a very young and very ambitious research group in Gießen under the leadership of Werner Seeger. He started at the end of the last century to build up a strong research group and a very special center. Now it is recognized as an excellence center in Germany on the field of lung research. And that was the very first place when I learned I got introduced to collaborative research and introduced to interdisciplinary, and now I could also say to interprofessional research. That was the very first time, and it was a very deep, obviously, this collaboration left a lot of very deep traces in my mind. So it is not really. It is now for me more and more easy to work in a collaborative way. But I have to say right now that I learned a lot of new things in this LOIS during the last year, even more details about how to carry out collaborative research as a professional way. So we really did an excellent job. Very much enjoyed the time with all these excellent speakers from all around the world. Of course, many of them, or at least the research places where they usually work, was familiar to me. But to meet people from Harvard, from CERN, and so on, that was quite good.
Thank you.
It was quite impressive.
But what is always, I think, specifically with you, and what may also be interesting for those joining this webinar, I mean, it's obvious that you have a very busy schedule and that you do a lot of different things. And now as a vice dean, what motivated you in your position to join a program like LOIS? What was the driver? I mean, you said you were in contact with collaborative science already before, but what motivated you to make that investment to really, lift it up to a different level?
first of all, I have to say it needs an investment. It needs time. So that should be really clear to all the people are interested to get such a education and very special education. Of course, I saw the different modules. Saw the speakers. Then, of course, what everybody would do, I went to Google and I Googled and I thought, okay, so they are really big shots in the field. That would be for me, especially for me, interesting to meet them, to talk to them, but also to listen to their experiences.
Okay.
Because they are leaders, they are stakeholders, they are people really supporting with their ideas, different governments and so on. So they are really building up the community in this field, and that was an extraordinary, a very special experience to, you delivered them to us. So all what I had to do to come, I think 12 times this first LOIS, to come to Vienna, and you opened the door, and it was amazing. So we were sitting together. Botten was also one of the participants, 2-3 days, and it was somehow a miracle. So for 2-3 days, it was really interesting.
Cool, thank you. Speaking about that, what was your favorite LOIS learning or your favorite module? What did you like most?
Yeah, of course, I'm a scientist.
Okay.
I'm a clinical scientist, and of course, for me, it was the most important or the most interesting module was about collaborative science.
Okay. So you're referring the module with Markus Nordberg from CERN and Philipp Türcher on collaborative science. Okay.
That was really, really interesting.
Cool.
So they of course. They also put together their view about what are the problems, but they gave us a lot of detailed insights how to solve tasks. What are the tasks which are needed or important for doing collaborative science?
Okay.
But they also gave us a lot of good ideas how to solve these problems.
Okay.
And there was also quite good leadership education in this module.
Okay. Good to hear. And now with all these LOIS learnings, and with some specifically favorable or favorite ones, how do you think what you learned in LOIS influences the way you think about doing science now as compared to 2 years ago? Is there anything where you say, okay, along these dimensions, I've learned that I can do science differently, better?
Oh, well, I would like to add one more point. Because at the moment I'm not, science is now at the moment my hobby.
Of course, in your new position.
My major job is now management, and I also have to say to this particular part of my life, what I learned that to teach and to bring open innovation and collaborative science to the young generation is especially important. So we have here a lot of space in Austria for improvement. So this is to educate, and this is really important to bring us to the people, to get them recognized that many of the stuff what they are doing is already collaborative science. And it is also important to teach them how to get to the next level in the science, to not necessarily to, of course, I think now the time is not I think there is still a lot of space for improvement from the government, especially how to support collaborative science.
Okay.
We do not have good incentives for doing collaborative science, but we should not wait for getting this tasks solved by the politicians. We should go right now, and although we have difficulties and we do not have perhaps enough money or enough time, but we should really proceed with this open-minded, collaborative work all around the world.
So that's also something I wanted to talk to you about. I mean, of course, you are now in a position where you can influence the design of an entire university and of an entire medical faculty. A medical faculty, a big one, actually.
Because I have a lot of very good colleagues that are working on different fields.
And you were talking about incentivizing change, in a sense. When you think about LOIS, you mentioned education, of course. We can train also younger scientists, PhD students, maybe even master students in open innovation and science practices and approaches. But if you think back about about what you learned in LOIS, what are your main takeaways related to how should you design a research organization, whatever it is, a department, a faculty, a university, a research group, that to be able to apply open innovation science principles and methods? What could we do besides the way we educate our PhDs?
It is a quite difficult question. I think the first step is to get recognized that what we do right now is building up and producing a lot of high-end researchers. We have a lot of incentives to push them, to bring them to the top level of the world. However, we forget at the same time that most of these high-end, very well educated researchers are not able to, or many of them are not, they don't recognize that collaborative research could improve their research. So they, of course, they do collaborations for different reasons, because they do not have this or that sources, or they try to reduce the costs and so on. But the collaborative research, in most cases, is reduced to a very narrow field. Just very. Usually people collaborate with colleagues from the same field, but from the other city or from the other university. So we have to get them somehow to go to the next level, to be able to be open. This is the same for a physician to start the collaboration with a colleague in natural sciences, for example, in material sciences or whatever. So, with people are very far from the domain, from the domain of this particular scientist. We really have to bring them to the point when they leave their comfort zone, and this is difficult.
So,
why should they do?
Yeah.
So. This is. I do not have an answer at the moment.
Probably need some nudging, right?
We need incentives.
Yeah. I remember very well you now saying we need to go beyond the usual suspects in terms of collaboration, and I very well remember our LOIS module on user-driven science, where we had a guest speaker who talked about a patient who told his story that he fixed his own heart. So he developed his own procedure to fix a specific heart disease that he had. And I remember very well, you were not among them, but there were a couple of medical scientists in the group whose eyes were getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I was thinking, okay, now they're leaving the room, but they didn't. So I remember very well when we got the feedback, this really opened my eyes that I could even go beyond other scientists. I could involve non-scientists in my scientific research, and that could actually be beneficiary. What do you think about that?
So this is a very important point.
Yeah.
So we really have to go out, and we have to involve larger groups or at least we have to involve the society.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, for me as a physician, the first target groups are the patients.
Mm-hmm.
And just by learning, just by observing the patient, we can learn, and just listening to them, we can learn from them what are their real needs for every day. Is the need is just to have an artificial heart, or do they need perhaps another support for getting a certain meters every day, or getting a certain food supply or whatever. Okay. So there are many other needs, but the patients really need, and we quite frequently forget these aspects. Okay. We just really focus on usually actually only on the organ. We are not very much interested on the psychology of the patients. Sometimes just by listening to them, we could learn a lot how their device work, because the patients are very good observers, but currently we do not have time. This is another point. So we really have to, we have whatever 20 minutes or half an hour per patient, and we have to go to the next, and this is not the way how to support and how to teach young people to involve also the society.
So creating ecosystems that allow for this is also something that is relevant, and that's actually something now in your new position you are able to do.
Yes, and I have to say, this morning, as I just arrived almost an hour ago from Linz. I went to a very interesting lecture this morning, organized by the University of Applied Sciences in Austria. This is their Fachhochschule. There was a professor from Zurich there, and the topic was open innovation in public health. And of course, there was and how to improve public health, how to improve healthcare by using interprofessional healthcare. And this was one of his important points, that we really have to build up. We have challenges, especially in the Western world. We have society with more and more elderly people, and chronic diseases are getting more and more into our focus, and chronic diseases are going to be our major challenge during the next years. Also, acute injuries are, I wouldn't say that negligible, but they are not so important anymore. And these challenges, how to deal with elderly patients with chronic diseases, can be only solved in an interdisciplinary team. And he gave a very nice lecture about and showed different examples from Lancaster till the University of Minnesota. Different universities showed their experiences with building up interprofessional teams, also involving patients, psychotherapy or physiotherapy, and physicians, how to improve the patient care just by the fact that they imply interprofessional teams. This is a kind of open innovation in public health already.
So LOIS is spot on what's currently relevant, right?
I thought, okay, wow. Okay. Actually, I'm not in Vienna yet, but the topic is the same. Cool. It was amazing this morning.
Before we go back to the setup of LOIS, I wanted to ask you a last question related to also your new position as a vice rector for medicine. How do you plan? Is there any plans how to use open innovation science in your future activities?
Yes, and that was rather a rhetorical question, I guess, from your side, because we would like to build up together with your help an open innovation project. As I have just mentioned, we have to build up the whole faculty for this medical faculty, building up the theoretical institute and the clinical institutes as well. So we have a couple of good ideas we developed during the last couple of weeks together. So we would like to use different processes to get an interdisciplinary team together for at least one of the research focus of the Johannes Kepler University in Linz.
Cool. I mean, I'm really excited about that. I have to say, all, as to my knowledge, all LOIS participants so far somehow incorporate open innovation principles and methods now in their work. And what you do is specifically interesting to really think about how to transform an entire organization into something that has open innovation and science in their DNA. So that's going to be very interesting. We will follow closely on that.
Thank you. And I'm really very, very happy. I just had this discussion 2 weeks ago with my rector, and he's so supportive. So it's
cool.
Amazing
very cool.
To see that even the leaders of the universities recognize that this is something we have to move with.
Cool. Now a few final questions going back to LOIS a little bit. You already mentioned that one of the things that you appreciated most was the access to people from all around the world. So building up a network of people that you can connect to also in your future research and innovation activities. What I also would like to ask you, one thing that we specifically wanted to do in LOIS, as I mentioned initially, LOIS is not a front-end lecturing style. So we work with your backgrounds and with your contexts. For example, in a module on finding application areas for scientific knowledge, we have asked participants to prepare interesting science they want to commercialize or put to use, come with that, and then we worked with this in class. So we didn't lecture you on doing it, we just did it. How did you experience that? Was that something that you said a lot of work because we had to prepare and we are already having all these busy schedules, so this was really valuable? How did you experience this co-creation of knowledge, all these discussions in the LOIS modules?
You know that this particular part gave an additional, I wouldn't say nuts, an additional highlight. You know, because there was a lot of we had a lot of talks, and then we had almost every day during this LOIS seminars we had really practical experiences. But with this last part, this is really necessary also to get from the theoretical point to the practical, to the practice. So the transformation is important. Even though it may fail, or the project or your idea, and this is what I would like to say to the participants of the next LOIS, even though if the idea will perhaps fail or will not be accredited, but just they should be brave enough to bring and raise their hand and bring ideas and discuss it. Of course, you will not be able to solve all the or to work with all the possible projects, but at least one or two practical examples are simply needed to understand how to apply and how to use the knowledge. So otherwise it will be forgotten quite fast, you know, like many other special education where you do not have this add-on.
So this, what I initially introduced as this experimentation space, trying out things, doing on the project training, that was something that you also experienced as valuable even in your position.
Believe.
Cool.
And one more thing I have to add. And of course, I guess you will have a very similar group like we had in the past. So people with very different background.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Some of them will be more experienced, some of them will be less experienced. Of course, the benefit will be different for every single participant. People with a lot of experience and I believe that you will have some of those people as well, will not be perhaps that beneficial. On the other side, we have this duty to bring people having less experience also to the same level, and such a modules or such a practical education within LOIS can help a lot.
So you're saying that the diversity in your group was something valuable also for you.
Really important. Definitely.
But trying to give the webinar participants a bit of an idea, we had a high diversity in terms of research disciplines, in terms of seniorities. We had postdocs, we had assistant professors, we had full profs, we had deans. So, but would you say that there are specific groups in terms of specific disciplines or specific career levels that could benefit from participating in LOIS mostly? Is there anything where I would say, if you are this or that scientist, definitely sign up for LOIS. If you're this or this scientist, probably go for something else?
As I would highly recommend for early stage postdocs, because I think as early as possible will be important to get in touch with open innovation. Because after a certain time, you cannot change your mind.
Okay. But you did? Yeah, I mean, you had that mind already, right?
I came from a different field, but I had this feeling we had a couple of really excellent colleagues, were not raised in such a field. They had difficulties. And they thought, okay, well, it was a nice experience. It was good to make it. It's good to learn, but it is too late for me. And I think it was a really important sentence for them. I think it was great that that they still continue to come to Vienna and to do it, but I think it's a little bit too late if you start at the age of over 40, I would say. So that should be for people between 25 and 35. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So you need a good mixture. Yeah. You need a couple of people they created or are in such an environment to show also best practice or at least of good practices. And examples bring always.
So we just had a discussion between our two alumnus here, and
Boltzmann suggested
that it's definitely important also to have really senior people in there, because while the open-mindedness may be higher among more junior people, we need people who can really bring this, who have the power to also create environments and ecosystems that can facilitate open innovation science. And you basically summed up, it's the mix that is interesting.
It's a mix.
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, from my experience, and I also talked since I coordinated the entire faculty, and everyone in our faculty basically said, this was probably the most fun teaching I ever did in my career. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I mean, and I felt the same. I've never had so much fun teaching a group than the LOIS people, because I felt that people really knew why they were here. I've never felt so much attentiveness. So people were really trying to capture it, and probably because you're scientists and not executives of companies, you're used to listen and really to internalize that knowledge and do something with it. And all my colleagues, all those who are in the faculty, said this was so much fun. I had the feeling that I learned so much myself, and these people really knew why they were there. So I think that was for me, it was a unique experience to discuss with this diversity of people from a totally different background. Not always having like money as a motive to learn, but really to think about how can we jointly push the way we improve science and better connect it to science and business.
Indeed.
Cool. I have a last question for you. And that's not really a question, yeah? But what would you, if this is your last message to all those many people who join us in the webinar right now, what would you tell them? What would be your last few sentences to them?
Wow.
No pressure.
Come and enjoy it. So do try to get into such communities doing open innovation and practicing open innovation as soon as possible and as long as you can. Try to learn from their experience as much as you can, and also use it.
Cool. Good last words. You said the word community. That's one thing that I would like to add. So LOIS, the Lab for Open Innovation in Science, is one activity of our Open Innovation in Science Research and Competence Center. So we do all kinds of other things. For all those who are interested in the other things, please get in touch. But one thing that all our LOIS participants, of course, are invited to is to join our Open Innovation Science community. We have already a lot of people who are interested in these topics. And on top of LOIS, we provide different other ways for interacting among like-minded people as part of our community. For example, there's on top of LOIS, there's once a year we offer a hot topics module. So we are going to invite everyone in the community to join additional learning and experimentation spaces. And our next hot topics module will take place next year. Marie, it's in the fall next year, right? And it's going to be on open and big data analytics. So joining LOIS is also an opportunity to engage with us in an ongoing basis. And like Andrea does it, then also beyond participating in LOIS, realize and implement open innovation in science projects. Great. So I think that's it from our side. We are now taking questions from the audience. Marie has already selected some of them. So feel free to type in your questions in the chat function. There's a question saying, Andrea, could you please elaborate on how LOIS has changed your research practice and how you will implement open innovation and open in science at the Johannes Kepler University in Linz?
Wow. As I have just mentioned, I have started to work at the Johannes Kepler University in August. So we are at the moment in the process to build up our open innovation project. We will introduce to the community first to the university quite soon together with Marion. So I told already a couple of sentences about it. We would like to use it for example, to find research questions in public health. This is one of the point. How LOIS has changed my own research practice. I have told you that my research is already a very interdisciplinary and very interprofessional research. I saw my job in LOIS also to give ideas to the younger people, how to improve, how to involve other scientists into their research. So what it changed for my research practice, especially with the Johannes Kepler University. I have contacted a couple of people from the other faculties, from the natural sciences, to to enjoy my research group, and at the moment we are working. We are trying to work out how it would be possible. So 2 points to make it short. To involve even more people, I would describe them as aliens on the field of linguistic research. This is one of my most important message. And open innovation will be the second point is implemented in how to define new research questions.
Okay,
and
cool.
Perhaps also one of our new institutes there.
Maybe I can, if that is okay, I add up to give you some more information on what former LOIS participants did in their projects. For example, one colleague in the field of traumatology research is now setting up together with us also a large crowdsourcing project in which medical professionals and patients are involved in generating research questions in the field of traumatology. So that's one of the LOIS projects that emerged from the LOIS. Yeah. Then we have other colleagues with whom we are working on developing a hackathon. Good. So we had some technical problems. Sorry for that. So I was just talking about another format where, together with some researchers in the life science field, we're setting up a large citizen science project, which is also really interesting. So you can see that there's a variety of open innovation in science initiative that were inspired by LOIS and that are currently implemented along the entire scientific research process. Some have decided to involve external knowledge sources in early stages, like generating research questions, others related to data analysis and data collection, and yet others are also working on using open innovation methods to translate their science into innovation. So we have 2 researchers, 2 LOIS participants who are now also working on translating their knowledge into a startup. So science-based entrepreneurship and innovation, also applying open innovation methods. There's another question that we got from one of the participants that was who was asking, what are the biggest challenges of implementing open innovation at a scientific institution? Yeah, and if I had the final answer to that, I would probably be able to make a lot of money with it. But I think what we learned, implementing open innovation principles and methods in a scientific institution will require a cultural shift towards working differently. And as Andrea said, of course, we think we work, we are already open and collaborative in our work, but basically we are all in our own scientific silos. And unbreaking or unblocking these silos is, of course, a challenge related to organizational design. So how do we set up research groups? How do we also incentivize and reward the way we do science? If single author publications are still the most important thing, that's going to be different. We also have experienced that it is a leadership challenge. So open innovation in science leadership requires a shift away from traditional hierarchical leadership approaches. It means that you have to allow for, at least to a certain extent, self-organizing structures. You have to allow to let go of at least a certain amount of your control. We have learned that open innovation science leadership also means that you have to both seed and accept authorities as you go in collaborative approaches, and to create create and hold spaces in which this can happen. That requires structural changes, that requires cultural changes, that requires changes with respect to strategy making, of course, and leadership.
And if I can add something, I think it's really, really important. We need champions.
Yeah.
This is what I learned at the time when I was a dean for the doctoral studies for many years in Graz. And I was involved in this European University Association Council of Doctoral Education. And this time, the chair was Paul Chambas from the Descartes University in Paris. And he used the very first time this word, you need champions if you would like to do collaborations. We talked at this time about joint PhDs and so on. But I will never forget this discussion with him. I had to learn that the good leader for an open innovation is the person who is able to build bridges.
Yep.
This person should they have to listen. So this is the very first point. Yeah. The good leader in open innovation is the person who is going to listen and not to give the ideas what to do. Yeah. And most importantly, the good leader should provide intellectual stimulation for a new projects. And I think this is something what many leaders have to learn, because most of the leaders were trained on a completely different way, on the very hierarchical way, and many of them, they think, if I'm not able to give the most precise stimulation how to do something, then I'm not a good leader. Yeah. But this is counterproductive in for open innovation.
And what
Sorry for interrupting you.
No, not at all. What you just say
we need
totally resonates with our ongoing open innovation leadership research. So, but I think we're almost. We have 2 minutes left. Probably to close that down, we have the next LOIS starting in May 2018. Applications are still possible until November 15, 2017. As I said initially, we will select a group of 20 participants for the next LOIS. If you have any questions, there's a lot of material on our website. You can always get in touch with Marie Trappel, the LOIS program manager. And if you're interested, you can, of course, also get in touch with me directly. So feel free to email me or call me. I would very much like to thank you, the audience, for your questions. I've seen that there were quite a lot of questions also that were answered in parallel to our discussions. I would very much like to thank Botond and Andrea as LOIS alumni to share their experiences. I think it's always nicer to hear from those who really experienced it and not those who are providing it. Thank you also, Marie, for helping in setting this up. I hope this gave you more information on LOIS. I hope you consider applying for LOIS, and we look forward to receiving your applications and your questions. For your information, the webinar was recorded, and it's going to be available on our website pretty soon after we finish this webinar. So thank you very much, everyone, and bye-bye from Vienna.
Bye now.